Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. I'm John Zorn, Executive Director of ArtsReach, and we're very happy that Natasha Waheed could be with us. She's coming to us live from the UK, where she's spending some time. So we're really happy that she stayed up late.
Not too late, 7 p.m. So we're right on the cusp.
All right, very good. And she's going to be talking about education programs and arts organizations. So if you have questions, just type them into the question box and we'll handle them at the appropriate time. And take it away, Natasha.
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with y'all. I know everyone is busy, so thank you for joining us today. And let's dive in. So before I jump into the session, how about I introduce myself? So like John said, my name is Natasha. I represent a company called CourseStorm. If you're not familiar with CourseStorm, we offer class registration, enrollment management, and marketing software. The company was started in 2012 by the two smiling fellas that you see on the screen. We are based in Maine, and our whole ethos is about making things impossibly simple for arts education administrators and other education admins. So today we have over 700 customers, most of whom are in the arts, and we've connected almost 2 million people with classes and courses. Have a huge commitment to lifelong learning. It's why we're here. It's why we do what we do. Whoops. As for me, why am I here talking to y'all? So my name is Natasha. I'm the head of marketing at CourseStorm, and personally, I am a lifelong theater lover, participant, arts lover. This is a photo of me from my musical, my junior year of high school. Feel free to guess which one it is. I feel like a lot of folks will know. But in my role at CourseStorm, I get to spend a lot of time talking to our customers and our prospects and hearing about the challenges they're facing, the opportunities they're seeing, what's working, what's not working, and all of that informs resources that we build to help support this community, including today's session. So that's why I'm here with you today. Before I dive in, I would love to actually hear from y'all, and feel free to use the question box to share what challenges are top of mind for your organization right now. Anything that comes to mind, anything that you're facing. Give it a couple.
I'm sure that there are a few challenges out there, so don't be bashful. just let us know what is happening in your universe. Go right ahead. Come on.
And don't worry, I have challenges on the next slide that we can talk through. Hopefully some will resonate.
Well, I think people are pretty shy today, Natasha.
No problem. If a challenge occurs to you at any point, feel free to drop it in the chat. But I will share some of what we're hearing in the community. So these questions represent some of what we've been hearing that's keeping arts leaders up at night. How do we navigate funding uncertainties is a huge one. How do we reach new audiences? How do we nurture and expand our existing audiences? How the heck do we prevent staff overwhelm and burnout? And how do we ensure our sustainability as an organization? How do we become or stay a pillar in our communities? These are the things that we're hearing in spaces like this one, at events, in community conversations, on social media. And as I'm sure y'all know, these are not super easy problems to solve, especially when some of the levers that we've relied on in the past are less reliable in the present.
Right. We do actually have a few people who have responded. So let me read them, okay?
Yeah, thanks, John.
All right. Reaching out to the community and bringing in new students. Also, student retainment once they reach high school level. Because there are school programs available.
Yep.
Okay. That's where we're at right now. Okay, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And those are, I think what y'all are saying is also represented here. So a lot of folks facing similar challenges. And I did want to talk about some of the levers that we've relied on in the past that are making things even tougher right now. One of those is ticket sales. So when we think about our arts organizations, a lot of us are earning income with contributed income, so that's grants and funding, and earned income. And for theaters, ticket sales are usually the #1 source of earned income. This is data from TCG's Theater Facts, and this is really showing that since COVID, ticket sales have seen a pretty steady decline. We're just now starting to see them rebound, but they're nowhere near the levels that they were before COVID. And this is just one thing that organizations are dealing with that's making it more difficult to become an organization, a sustained organization. But we know that we need our organizations to have longevity because you're doing critical work. I love this slide. This is just a few grabs from some of the organizations we work with at CoreStorm focused on their missions. So you can see here, and I know you all know this, you're living this, the work you do in your communities is so essential. And so we need to figure out how to solve these challenges, right? How do we drive continued engagement with our communities to make sure, to ensure our own sustainability? How do we really meet people where they are and provide offerings that can help them connect to themselves, their community, and our organizations, your organizations? Which brings us to what we're really going to talk about today. Why education programs are vital and how to build an education program that really helps your whole organization thrive. So first, I want to talk a little bit about why education, why learning. And many of y'all may already be bought in on this, but it can be helpful to have some of these facts handy, right? So the first fact that I want to talk about is learning as incredibly connective. So the quote on the screen is from a CoreStorm customer, American Stage, and I love it because I think it really articulates this reality that learning is a catalyst that inspires connection with peers, with teachers, with communities, and with the self, right? So learning is interactive, it's vulnerable often, especially if we're learning in a group space, it's collaborative. So it is sort of opening us up and increasing those connective bonds. Another fact that is super important is that learning, pardon me, learning engages people of all ages. So again, many of y'all likely know this, but the average age of a theater goer is about 40 years old, at least a Broadway theater goer. But what about the younger generation? We know if we are going to have longevity, we need to start building audiences when they're young. We need to be able to reach people across the spectrum of age. And learning does that. And not only does learning allow us to engage younger people and older people, it allows us to engage people with different personalities who may not be showgoers, and it also engages different parts of our brain. So you're broadening the aperture of how you can reach your patrons, reach your audiences. Related, learning really fosters long-term loyalty with your organization. This is one of my favorite quotes from an organization we were recently speaking to, and she was talking about how their organization has now been around for long enough that some of their students, when they were kids, are now adults and have become regular sustaining donors. Our CEO, Brian, talks about how he still donates to the ballet organization where his kids, who are all fully grown, took classes when they were kids. The learning engages folks when they're young, it engages full families, and it fosters this long-term affinity with your organization. And then to kind of round us out, so there's a cognitive bias called the IKEA effect. And it refers to when you build something, when you put pieces together, you actually attach more strongly to it than when you buy something whole and made. Learning is kind of like that. When we are learning, we're opening ourselves up, we're building new skills, and that's how we build identity. And when you help someone build personal identity, the connection is so strong. You're helping people find passions and figure out what they want to do with their lives. They're being transformed, or maybe just finding a deep appreciation. And this is why learning is so powerful when we think about building relationships with our audiences. And it's why leading arts organizations are really investing in organization or in education, pardon me. So these are just a few on the screen, really incredible organizations: Red Mountain Theater Company in Birmingham, Alabama, Spark in Richmond, Virginia, Groundworks Art Lab in Boulder, Colorado. These are different kinds of arts organizations, but all of them believe in the power of education and are prioritizing it. So now let's get to the meat of the presentation. Let's talk about how you actually build a thriving education program. So I've organized this session in kind of a blueprint. We're going to talk through 5 characteristics. What I will say is that this is what I'm going to present to you is an ideal program. Most of y'all will look at this and be like, oh, I don't have all of these things. And that is totally okay and totally normal. This is a walk before you can run situation. And the idea is to really pay attention to what your organization is already doing and maybe where there's opportunity to do it even better. And then look for the gaps and the opportunities that you think could have the most impact when I talk through these characteristics. It's a building process, and that's totally normal, and it's exactly what we want to be doing. So let's dive in. The first one I'm going to talk about is what I call a connected catalog or a connected curriculum. And this is really about your educational offerings. So leading programs are able to meet a true community need, fill a gap in the community, as well as showcase their mission, their organizational perspective, and develop offerings that kind of sit at the intersection of both of those things. So on the screen are a few key questions that you can ask yourself as you're starting to develop your class catalog, your camp catalog for the next season. And some of these, again, are going to feel like common sense, but I find it can be really, really helpful to have a rubric like this as you're going through the process. So what's unique about your organization, about your mission, about your vision, about your stance, your perspective on the world? What's unique about the area you're in, your region? Who makes up your community? This is really important if you're serving young families versus older retirees. That's going to influence what kind of offerings are going to really resonate with your community. What are your local industries? This is where you can find kind of related topics. And this is maybe more relevant in continuing education, but it can also be really fun if there are local industries where it makes sense to give people some skills in your arts education program that can align to those industries. Probably the most important one that our head of customer success was like, this is really what sets apart the most thriving education programs, is making sure that you're gathering that feedback. So how are you talking to students? How are you talking to the community to understand what they want to take? It can be really helpful to look at your most popular offerings and also to think about like broader seasonal or cultural trends that can influence some of your educational offerings. And then of course, a little bit more artistically, what instructors or teaching artists do you have access to? This is obviously going to influence what content you can actually provide. Pro tip, okay, I do want to mention I have embedded some resources in these slides. There's a QR code on the slides. I hope this will work. You should be able to just take a photo of the QR code and open up the resource. We are going to send, I believe, these slides after the fact. So if it doesn't work now, hopefully it will work then, but wanted to make sure you had some additional resources. So on this note, this is kind of a pro tip. Once you have developed your catalog, your curriculum, make sure you're showing it off. So when it comes to actually listing, displaying your classes, wherever you display them, usually online for a lot of our clients, it's about really these 3 things. So compelling imagery, making sure that you have some visuals that capture what the class is going to be. We're visual creatures, us humans, and so we really respond to photos. Course descriptions, this is a really big opportunity to articulate what's going to be so great about your class or your camp. It's the last thing people read before they decide if they're going to sign up or not. So make sure you're spending some time with those descriptions. And then finally, instructor bios and reviews, especially if you're working with a really experienced instructor or someone who's bringing a lot to the table, show that off. Make sure you're displaying that in the description itself and in the social media or any kind of marketing you're doing around the course. And this is just an example I wanted to share. So this is a course term customer, Reeves Downtown School of Music. They're located in Elkin, North Carolina. And I love this course description, this class itself. It's actually a camp. So this is their Tunes and Trails camp. And you can see kind of all of the things I've just talked through at play in this offering. So not only do you have great imagery that shows you kind of what the kids are going to experience, but in the description, you can really get a sense of what this camp is going to offer. And going back to the rubric at the beginning, this camp is really rooted in what makes this area unique and what matters to this organization. So kids are going to learn the traditional music of the Blue Ridge, which is the region that they're in. They're going to learn the guitar, the fiddle, and the banjo in the old time way. So it's really important for this organization to kind of pull that thread of tradition and keep people connected to what makes this region so special and what makes the history so special. There's also a nature component. They're going to explore the watershed, which is a super important part of the ecology of this region. And they're going to have fun. They're going to hike and bike and do what kids love to do. So it's this really great intersection of uniqueness and something that's really going to resonate with the community and with the kids that they're going to serve. All right, on to characteristic number 2. We just talked about catalog, curriculum. Next one is a stellar student experience. And I just want to be clear, when I say student, I'm kind of talking about the whole sign-up experience. So this includes like parents, if you're running youth programming. This is really referring to the experience that patrons have when they're trying to either register themselves or someone that they love or are looking after for one of your courses. And I really break the student experience down into kind of 4 chunks. So a lot of people think of it as maybe the in-class experience, but it's actually much broader than that. So let's talk through it. We're going to go on a little journey. So the first chunk that I want to talk through is what I call discovery. So this is really how folks are finding you and how they're coming to your offerings, to your educational program. The first question, how your brand is communicated. How is your brand communicated? I don't want this to be a scary question. When I say brand, I don't necessarily mean like you need to have a sophisticated branding document. Some organizations do and will. This is really just about making your voice and tone consistent and your look and feel consistent insofar as you can in all the kind of touch points that are going to bring people to your organization. So that might be physical flyers, it might be digital ads, but across that spectrum, just trying to represent your brand, because those little touch points are going to create connection with your patrons. Getting more into the nitty gritty, how easy is it to find your organization? So this goes back to really knowing your community. Where are they spending time? Are they folks who are more analog and they're going to gather information in real spaces, like in community centers and libraries? Is your organization represented there? I don't really know of an organization these days that can get away with not having a digital footprint. So the digital component of this is the other side, right? Are your offerings optimized for search? Do you have ads running? Do you have a social media presence? These are all things to consider. And then once people get to your website, how easy is it to browse? Consumers today are really used to very easy experiences online. You can blame Amazon. So how easy is it to actually move through your website? And then when you think about your actual classes and camps, how easy is it for people to find exactly what they're looking for? So this is where categories and labels, any kind of filtering can become really helpful versus having to maybe scroll through a whole long list of offerings to find the jewelry making class that I want to take. So that's the discovery process. And then we move into what I call the signing up or pre-class process or stage. And apologies, these are not the most creative naming mechanisms I've ever used, but hopefully they are clear. So moving from just generally on your site, how easy is it for folks to find the offerings that they want to find? From there, how simple is it to actually sign up for your classes and camps? And there are a lot of organizations we talk to that are getting away with kind of a clunky experience here, but it can really be a deterrent to folks actually registering for your classes if you're making them jump through a lot of hoops, if there are a lot of forms to fill out in different places. It can really cost you in terms of signups and also in terms of sentiment. People get frustrated. This is a special call out, but one that we think is really important and that we've seen is really important at CourseStorm. Is there a wait list if the class is full? This again goes a long way in establishing positive sentiment, right? I'm really excited for this class. I want to take it. It's full, shoot. But now I have the assurance that I can get on a wait list, and if a spot opens up, I can get in. It just makes people feel like you're giving them that little extra. And then, of course, do parents and students have all of the information they need to prepare for class? Do you, on the flip side, have all of the information you need for an easy check-in on the day of? You're not chasing people, you're not chasing parents via email and on the day. It's really about making sure that when people show up, it's a seamless experience. And then, of course, underlying all of this is clear and consistent communication. The in-class experience, this is really influenced by the instructors that you have, the space that you have, the number of students that you're allowing in a class. So there are a few like kind of physical constraints here to consider that I'm sure you're all really thinking about already. But then there is also an evaluation component, and this is really important. So how are your instructors evaluated? Do you have a consistent feedback mechanism for your instructors, your teaching artists? And in general, how are you collecting and applying student feedback? So collecting it is one piece, analyzing it, of course, but then making sure you're demonstrating that you are responding to that feedback, whether in action or in actual response to the feedback. Pro tip here for in-class, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later in the session. Make sure you have release forms, and then make sure you're visiting classes so that you can gather testimonials and impact stories. Your education program is a goldmine for impact stories. So get in there, take photos, take videos, talk to students, and it's a real content goldmine. Okay, finally, we're at the final stage of the student experience, and this is what I call nurture. So this is really the process of continuing to engage with folks after they have come to a class. So a lot of this is reliant on marketing. And there's a screenshot on this slide. I'm actually going to show this screenshot bigger later in the presentation, so don't worry about trying to scrutinize too much, but it's just a marketing workflow. And this is really how you are sending folks offers, personalized recommendations, any re-engagement promotions, things that are going to get them to come back, right? It's all about getting those repeat students in the door. And then, of course, donation requests, referrals. These are maybe for your more highly engaged patrons. So nurture is really about making sure you have a system in place, and it can be very basic at first, but something that is working to keep your patrons, your students engaged with your organization after they come to their first class. That's the student experience. Y'all are doing great. We're heading into characteristic number 3. I hope everyone's still with me. This one, stay with me. Infrastructure, I know it's maybe a little bit less sexy than the first 2, but it's actually really, really important. The right infrastructure is going to support your staff, your admins, your volunteers, your instructors, the people who are running your education program day to day, because we all know overwhelm, wasted time, burnout, these are really real issues in this space, but the right infrastructure can sustain us in really important ways. So the first part that I'm going to talk about is process. So as y'all, I'm sure know, there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to running an education program. So you may have some process, some standard process in place for certain motions. You may be doing some things ad hoc. That's okay. What I would recommend is that you simplify, standardize, and document at least the core processes that are required to run your education program. So on the screen, there are a couple of ideas, a couple of places where we have seen process be helpful, but really identifying the motions that are kind of the most key to running a successful program at your organization, and making sure those are as simple as they can be and that they're documented so that you can use those to train staff. You can use those in succession planning so someone doesn't leave and take all that institutional knowledge with them. And documenting these processes can also help you retain staff, right? Because people have a very clear roadmap for how to get things done. It sets expectation, it removes doubt, can just be really helpful. As you are auditing those core processes, thinking about how to simplify, that is also a really good time to look for places where super manual, because this is going to be an area where you may want to automate, which takes me to the other side of infrastructure technology. This is obviously what we specialize in at CoreStorm, so I'm happy to answer any questions about tech at any point. But we talk to a lot of organizations in the arts specifically that are using what we call poor fit solutions for their classes and camps. So that could be super manual solutions, like a combination of Google Forms and spreadsheets and manual emailing, or it might be using their ticketing software or their event software for classes and camps, which is great for shows, but not quite right for classes. And a lot of organizations will work with what they have until they hit a point where it just doesn't work anymore. And if your education is growing, and if your education program is growing, and if you want to unlock the full potential of your education program, you are likely going to get to this point. So just a few tips when you're looking for good fit technology to support classes and camps, is to look for benefits across 3 buckets. How is it going to benefit your staff? How is it going to benefit your patrons and your students? How is it going to benefit your organization at large? So this means looking for capabilities in a provider that allow for, the motions that make your ed program run. So that's things like being able to easily create a compelling class catalog. That's like having a clear, mobile-friendly sign-up experience for your students and your parents. It's like having custom forms so that you can get all of the information you need when you need it, when folks are signing up for the class. It's like automated waitlisting and payment plans that are really going to reduce the barrier to entry for a lot of folks and open up access. And it might be flexible instructor access so that you can take some of the burden off your administrators and share it with your teaching artists. And then when it comes to supporting your organization, it might be looking for technology that really integrates with other systems in your ecosystem, and that might have automated marketing features so that you can continue to grow the program. So this is not an exhaustive list of the characteristics of a great tech platform for classes and camps, but hopefully it'll give you a framework in which to think about technology when you are evaluating it. Okay, characteristic number 3, we're going to talk about program integration. So integrating your education program with the rest of your organization is really what takes things to the next level. So for smaller organizations, this might be a little bit easier. It might feel a little simpler, often because the person who owns the education program is owning a lot of other things. They might also be the box office manager. They might also be the marketing manager. So the education program is already kind of smushed in there. In larger organizations, though, we often default to siloing, and this happens naturally. It happens everywhere, across every type of industry. The box office might be in one bubble, development might be in another bubble, education is in another bubble. So this section is really about how you fight inertia and integrate those programs. So the first piece of this is what I call strategic integration. And this is one thing that does really need to happen at the leadership level. So this is where you really need your leadership team to buy in and say, education is as important as everything else that we're doing at this organization. That might look like, should look like, I would say, making sure that your education program goals are flowing from the organizational goals. So when goal setting is happening, the education program is properly represented and linked so that you can say, here's how the ed program is furthering the goals at the tippy top level. It usually means making sure the education program is represented at the leadership level. So whether that's on the board, whether that's in executive meetings, making sure that the ed program has a champion, someone who believes in it, who understands its value, and who is really going to take the time to tell the story of the education program so that it's represented. And related, is your education program viewed as a key part of your community impact strategy? So going back to the mission behind most of our organizations, we're all really focused on community impact. So making sure that education is viewed as a key piece of benefiting your community is going to be really important to making sure it's integrated with everything else that you're doing. The second piece of this is what I call tactical integration. And what I really mean here is data integration. Because once you have the data integrated, you can power so many things. So big question here is, do you have a central source of truth for all of your patron data? Is that central source of truth connected to your other systems so that if you do have multiple systems running, so a ticketing software and a class registration software and a donation platform, are all of those platforms connected so that you don't have to manually feed data into any one place? It's just feeding into itself. Because once we have a centralized and easily accessible source of truth for our patron data, we can use it for so many things. So then the next part of that is actually using the data, using it to make decisions, using it for really important things like grant reporting, using it for marketing and fundraising and all the great things that really help grow our entire organization. So I just wanted to share kind of an example of a source of truth. These are screenshots from Spectrix, which is a ticketing and CRM system that we integrate with at CoreStorm. This is one system that's out there, but you can see there's a central patron record. And in this record, you can see the shows that they've attended. You can see the camps and classes that they've registered for. In the ideal scenario, you would see merchandise purchases, past donations, membership status. And then with a complete patron record, it becomes really easy to create, well, maybe not really easy, but it becomes much easier to create high impact segments. And that's groups of patrons that share similar traits, similar behaviors, because once you have a segment, you can start to kind of unleash very relevant marketing. This is just an example marketing workflow. It's like a series of emails and actions that you can unlock. And once you have powerful segments based on that patron data, these workflows become much more powerful because they can be more personalized. And I think we probably all know that when something is more personalized to us, when it really like hits on a thread that we care about, we're going to be more responsive. Your patrons will also be more responsive. So segmentation is definitely one of those things that's like walk before you run. It doesn't need to be super, super complicated, but having the ability to target some really high impact segments can be a game changer for organizations. Okay, that kind of tees us up for the final characteristic I want to talk through, and that's really strategies to scale. How are we growing? And the first one I want to talk about is probably my favorite in the whole presentation, and that's going back to this idea of harnessing impact stories. So when we gather all our patron data in one place, that aggregate data is really important. We all know that, especially for things like grant reporting, for evaluating overall performance. But when it comes to helping people, and by people, I mean like our community members, our board members, our funders, when it comes to helping people really understand the impact that we're having, it is all about emotional stories. And like I said before, your education program can be a gold mine for stories like this because of the traits we talked about at the very beginning of this presentation, right? Learning is vulnerable, it's collaborative, it's connective, it's really bringing people to a place of transformation. And when you can capture those stories, you can tell truly emotional impact stories that will move people to action. So I have an example here. It's a YouTube video. I'm not 100% sure how well it's going to work. I'm going to try. This is from an organization called North Bennett Street School. They're a customer of CoreStorm. They're not an arts organization per se. They're more about skilling people in the trades, but this video is an incredible example of connecting the organization's history and unique mission to their unique community impact, and it's just really powerful. So I'm going to play like a minute of it, and we'll see how it goes.
Being in high school and everything, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to go to school. But I never had that here. I love coming here. I love the people here. It's very welcoming.
And I knew going to college or getting an office job wasn't for me. So having something built by myself, it gives me a sense of a feeling like of pride and accomplishment.
Everybody's here for the same reason a little bit, but from completely different backgrounds. I really love the fact that my program has an 18-year-old and a 74-year-old.
Everything I was seeing was, I found my people, I found my place. Everyone is so into what they do and the passion.
Okay, I'm gonna stop us there. If you ever want to pick me up, I would recommend going to this YouTube channel, North Bennett Street School YouTube channel. It's got beautiful stories. But when we think about these types of stories, this is obviously highly produced, highly well done, but it doesn't have to be that way, right? You can capture really powerful sentiment just on your phone. And then it's about how you then it's about how you use those stories. Just gonna skip along. So I wanted to speak a little bit to some different tactics for spreading the word. So this is both reaching new audiences and engaging your existing audiences. So social media is still a really important channel for most of our organizations. On the screen are a few examples of how folks are leveraging social to connect with community, including folks who might not be in your audience yet. So through organic and paid social, if you have the option to do that, you can really spread awareness across the platforms where folks in your target are already spending time. So depending on who you're trying to reach, that might be Meta, it might be Instagram and YouTube, or if you're trying to reach a younger audience, it might be YouTube or TikTok. But social is a really great place to spread the word organically. And then once you have people in your database, as we've already discussed, email marketing can be a super powerful and reliable channel that you can use to really nurture that audience and keep folks coming back, keep them engaged, send them offers that they're really going to resonate with. And that's how we really nurture that existing audience base and make sure that we're getting everything that we can out of those folks who have already connected with us, who have already shown interest in what we have to offer. And there is another resource on this screen. I'm going to hold for a second in case people want to screenshot it. Okay. This one has two resources on the screen. Oh my gosh. But the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to spreading the word is partnerships. So partnerships are really about exchanging resources, of course, but when you're thinking about partnering with other organizations in the community, partnering with schools, you should be thinking strategically about how you can reach new audiences through those partnerships, right? So if you're thinking about partnering with a local business in a venue partnership, for example, and you have a kids theater class, you might want to look at a local toy store where there's overlapping clientele. Partnerships, of course, can also look like sourcing vendors or sponsors or locations for a festival you're hosting. And of course, if you run youth programming, there's often opportunity to partner with schools. Schools are usually super open to partnerships with arts nonprofits because, of course, there's continuing cuts to arts education. And so there's usually really strong overlapping benefits. It's just about finding the right partner or partners for your organization. And these partners are really going to help you bring more eyes to your offerings and also get resources. So a couple more on the screen here, tips for partnering with local businesses and tips for partnering with schools. So we'll let that sit for a second. Okay. And that's it. You did it. We have come to the end. So I just wanted to recap some of the final takeaways. So as we talked about, as I firmly believe, education is vital for every arts organization, but you have to set your program up for success if you want to drive real impact. To do that, we recommend you focus on 5 key areas: a class catalog that marries your uniques, your organizational uniques with what your audience really cares about, a stellar student experience from first touch to them becoming a loyal patron, infrastructure to support your staff, including processes and technology to support your staff and your community, strategic and tactical integration of your education program with everything else that you're doing, and strategies to help you scale the program and unlock more resources so that you can continue to grow your impact. That's what we're all here for in the end. And that's it. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, for your attention. And I would love to open it up for questions if we have any. And if you're curious to learn more about what we do at CourseStorm, you can just go to coursestorm.com.
Perfect. Okay. We do have some comments, etc. So let's start with those. And if you have questions, type them in and send them on in. Okay. Someone said one of the challenges is improving access and the registration process for schools to attend student shows, as most ticketing software doesn't have education-friendly components.
Sorry, say that last part again, John.
Most ticketing software doesn't have education-friendly components.
Yeah, it's very true. So I just want to make sure I'm capturing the question entirely. So the question was making registration easier for schools or for students in general?
No, for schools to attend student shows. So if symphony is playing for, their local schools, then how do you get those schools signed up?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, there's often a lot of gaps in ticketing software's ability to support class and camp registration, right? Ticketing software is designed often for like single ticket sales, maybe bulk ticket sales, but not like registering an entire class of folks and making sure you're getting all of the information that you need to support those folks when they show up, especially if you're doing youth programming and you need to get like allergy information and pickup contact information, and there's so many moving parts. So that is often why folks look at a separate platform to support the goals that they have with classes and camps.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's a comment. The Ashland Symphony Orchestra in Ohio has a fan club for students in grades 4 through 12 plus college students. We invite them to play on stage with the professional musicians during our Holiday Pops concert. All right.
That's so cool. So a fan club for students, and then those students, it sounds like, get kind of special access to really exciting opportunities.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right, here's a question. How do I use those impact stories to raise funds for my organization?
Yeah. I would use them across all of the channels that we discussed. So use email to reach out to your community. Let your community know. One, there's a wild stat that is like, over 50% of people don't know that nonprofits are nonprofits. So a lot of folks have no idea about our nonprofit status. And then a lot of organizations are a little bit hesitant to like ask for things, to say like, hey, this is the situation, especially right now. These programs are in jeopardy and we need your support. Pairing those asks with an impact story can be super powerful. And you can do that on email, you can do that in social media, you can do that in forums and in person, do it at your live shows. I would say fold that ask in wherever you can and leverage those stories to really boost the ask.
All right. Very good. Let's have another question, shall we? What are some tips for gathering useful student feedback?
Okay, I love this question. Yes. So feedback can feel sort of opaque or how to gather it. But what we really like to think about with student feedback is first like setting goals for your feedback. So are there specific things that you're trying to understand? Or is it more just like trying to keep a general pulse on student sentiment? Clarifying that at the outset is really helpful. So if you're looking for like, hey, why aren't people interested in this specific class? Making sure that that's clear at the outset versus like, we just want to make sure everyone's happy and it's going to be a continuous pulse. So have a goal. And then when it comes to actually like surveying your students, it can be really helpful to do a combination of focused questions that are about specific things and then open-ended questions where you let them just type in their thoughts, because you can get a lot of great feedback out of just open-ended stuff. Sometimes you get less great feedback, but it's a worthwhile question type to have. The other tip, like pro tip there, is asking for consent to share that feedback, because sometimes you'll get really great testimonials that are coming through those feedback forms. And they're like, you can do this in really different formats. You can do like course evaluations, you can do customer feedback forums, you could do a poll on social media, you could do interviews with students. And we actually have a pretty great blog on student feedback that I'll share it with John, and then maybe he'll sneak it into the follow-up.
Okay. How do you push for strategic integration if you don't have leadership buy-in?
Yeah, this can be tough. And I like to think about it the way I think about it in my job when I'm trying to get stakeholder buy-in for something. So I would recommend kind of targeting a champion. So that might be a board member, it might be someone on the executive team who has shown interest in the education program and in what you're doing. And then zero in on them and commit to making them your education program champion at the leadership level. So focus on what's in it for me when you're talking to them. So what's in it for them? So why should they pay attention to the education program? How does it align to their goals, to the things they're trying to achieve? Speak their language. And then talking about those impact stories, really think about how you can demonstrate that program impact to one specific person. And then once you can get that like champion on board with you, then you can really start to make waves at the leadership level, because you'll have a representative in your corner. And they can help you elevate the education program and make sure it stays on that strategic radar.
Great. Okay. I think we have time for one more question, unless someone types one and sends one in real quick, then we'll be able to handle that as well. So if something's burning, go ahead and here it is. We got it. Okay. Are there survey form systems that you would recommend? I see a lot of organizations using Google Forms.
Yeah, I mean, we use Google Forms for a lot of things. They're easy, they're free. Depending on how you want to be able to manage the feedback, you can just stick it in a spreadsheet. So Google Forms is definitely a good place to start. There are also other more sophisticated forms like Typeform if you want to have special logic in the form. So if someone answers a particular answer to a question, then it will unlock a different pathway. But usually you don't need to go that sophisticated for a feedback form. It's really just about getting rankings, getting some like voice of student. So Google Forms is a great place to start.
Okay. How about organizations that are just getting started with education programs or even thinking about starting one?
Mm,
Where should they focus first?
yeah. In terms of the characteristics, I would really start with the offerings so that they're actually kind of in order of how I would build sort of as your program's getting more sophisticated, but I would start with that catalog, those offerings. So really trying to dial in on like what can we bring to the community that is going to be a little bit different, be a little bit exciting, get people's attention. And then making sure you have a strong student experience. Obviously, that student journey I showed is pretty robust, so you don't have to have every single piece of that dialed in, but thinking about the big chunks and how you can show up as best you can across that whole student journey. So starting in those two areas. Um, and when it comes to like whether it should be kind of kids programming or adults programming. Uh, we often see theaters kind of starting with kids programming in like a summer camp format because it's like a more truncated way to test things. Um, and it also might be a time in the peak of summer when maybe theater attendance is lower, people are vacationing, but demand for kids activities is potentially higher. So trying to find those sweet spots where there might be some demand that you can ride to like test a new program is a really good way to start.
Super. Thank you, Natasha. We will get out this recording and slides tomorrow to our lists. And I just want to mention, we have 3 conferences coming right up this summer. We have one in Toronto next month, one in San Francisco at the end of July, and one in New York at the beginning of August. They're all called the National Arts Marketing Development and Ticketing Conference. Natasha will be with us in San Francisco and New York if you want to talk to her in person, but you can see all the info at artsreach.com. And we have a 3-for-1 offer. If you sign up by June 13, you can bring 2 people for free. So a lot of teams will be there. Try to make it. And Natasha, thanks again. We'll see everybody next time.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Thanks, y'all.
Okay.